sometime. There it is. Is my volume okay, or yeah? Okay. Oh, go away, that thing. Yes, I know I'm presenting to. Okay. There we go. We'll try that. So I want to start off with some announcements. First, lots of questions about the fourth independent novel play. So here I am. That may or may not serve as your fifth text for your course. So you need to have, you need a minimum of 4 for the course. You might have a fifth if you really loved your summer reading and you see how that works. Some people just, did not pick. Some people just didn't pick well, period. I had somebody in another class yesterday say, these are the books that I read. And I'm like, okay, none of these go together at all. But I started investigating, and I think we came up with a plan. But anyway, so this fourth independent novel or play does not have to be read by Rough Draft, okay? And that is why the Rough Draft has fewer sources than the final draft. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I can share it from here. I don't know if this is gonna work for me. Yeah, that wasn't very nice at all. Wow, it's doing all kinds of messed up things. All right. So hold that thought, everybody. Let me move you back over here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can share from my laptop so that I can control things a little bit better, hopefully. Okay, yes, that's lovely. All right. So hopefully that clarifies that question. Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things. Yay! Okay.
It's almost Friday.
I know.
We're almost there.
I know it. All right. Is it right? Yes, those are. Okay. And just a little bit further there. So there. Yay. So the due date is the week of April 12th for that fourth text. It will not be an essay. It's going to be a different task, but it's going to be a task that will kind of help you prep one more book for the AP exam. Some students have expressed concern about how long this seems to be taking or the slowness of their progress during time given in class. I'm not stopping you from doing any work outside class. So it's not, you don't only have to be working on it during class time. We're trying to kind of keep in mind the other things that you've got going on, as I always try to do, and so be working on that independently. Some students have expressed concern about coming up with an idea for a course. I don't know why I still have that up there. And so you might open up that link in number 3. And so this is a document that I shared back in mid-September. Oh, that's way too big. Way too little. Okay, there's no happy medium. I can't control it with my fingers. And let's see here. We go down a little bit further. There's actually, it may be useful for, what is it that you're doing here again? So it frames it in another way. And at the very bottom of that document, are some different sorts of ideas. And so I've got different courses that I took as an undergrad, grad school courses, and then other titles that come from other colleges and universities across the country. including IU. We've got Indiana Wesleyan on there. I know some of you are going there. We've got Georgia Tech. I don't know if anybody's been to Georgia Tech. Some Northwestern, some U Chicago, University of Colorado, some Notre Dame, so on and so forth. And so that may help you with your struggles. It may complicate matters. Hopefully it didn't do that. There's been some uncertainty about introducing the introduction part of your task. And so I want to take a look at that briefly as well. And I want to call that up for folks in the room too, and explode it out a little bit bigger for them. So I think we're going to be looking at page 3-ish. The outline of the task. Actually, maybe it's 4. It is 4. So if we're looking at this, the outline, the suggested outline, this makes it really easy. Well, that's easy for me to say, right? And so it's the introduction to the idea driving the course. Is it thematic? Is it author-driven? Is it genre-driven? Is it literary era-driven? And so students are asking about, what are the sources that are supposed to go into here? You're introducing your course. This is the defense of this thing that you want to do. Why should this course exist at all? Okay. And so the subsections of what exactly is the topic of the class of A, B, and C, you're probably not going to do all A, B, and C. Okay. It depends. So, for example, I've got students who are reading texts from historically underrepresented authors. And so there's a term that they need to define there in A is, what does it mean to be historically underrepresented? So that's a source that they can use to kind of make their defense. And as they, kind of move forward through their thinking, for instance, as a consequence of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor's death, and George Floyd's death, there was a lot of conversation over the summer about decolonizing the curriculum. And so you would utilize a source to define what it means. What does it mean to decolonize the curriculum? And where is this idea coming from? It means something a little different than what it sounds like. Okay? In the same way that defunding the police is a little bit different from what it sounds like if you're actually listening to what different people are saying. Okay? So different sorts of things would go into that, what warrants definition for the reader. Then, for the historical or author focused, that's going to kind of depend a little bit on what it is that you're doing. So I've got a student who is looking at 19th century Russian literature. And so they need to do research on what 19th century Russia looks like that helps to explain the significance of their course. Okay. Alternatively, I've got some students who are looking at Shakespeare. And so they might do a little bio on Shakespeare and talk about why Shakespeare continues to be important today. And so that would be, the research that's going on for letter B. And so they're probably not going to have any terms that warrant definition for the reader, unless we're talking about, maybe what does empathy look like? If you're talking about the literary, if you're talking about the author-driven, why is this particular author perhaps more empathetic to circumstances than others? Why do they speak to, you know, the way that we function as human beings, maybe more than other authors would? So there are some different kinds of possibilities. And then we get into letter C and the thematic focus, and lots of people are working on that. So it's probably going to be A or B or C, or A and B, or A and C, but it's probably not going to be all three of those. Does that help clarify things a little bit more, hopefully? Folks at home, does that make sense? Okay, all right. So what else do we have here? So number 5 in our announcements, our exam is going to be virtual. For those of you who voted for pen and paper, pencil and paper, I apologize. And so we're going to, be working on different sorts of things, kind of electronically, to move forward. Your typing skills. In terms of that, the digital, I think you're still going to have the option, but the link that I've provided here may kind of make that clear. You may still have the option of handwriting. Not quite sure about that for your writing, but their goal, from what I understand, is to be able to bring everybody in for the digital. There's a lot of, I still have a lot of uncertainty, but our window for AP exams has now moved to May 18th through the 28th. Okay, and we have these AP exam terms and conditions from College Board, and they're asking for you to review those terms and conditions before the exam administration, and they asked me to share that link with you. So I've shared that link with you. It's not something that I need you to do right now, but keep it on your radar. That's something that I may eventually ask you to certainly sign into and read through those terms and conditions. You do want to read through them. They're going to have again a variety of anti-cheating sorts of things in play, and I don't know what all that's going to look like. I'm hearing a lot of horror stories regarding lockdown browsers at the college university level, to the point where there have been some anecdotal stories of students, in some cases, like having to use like a jar or a can to go to the bathroom so that they don't have to get up and leave for concern of accusations of cheating. So lots of terrible stories exist out there, and I'm hoping that College Board is going to be sensitive to a lot of those concerns. That if there's ambient noise, accusations of cheating, all sorts of different things can occur. So you'll want to make sure that you read through those exam terms and conditions. We are going to have a book pickup. That'll be Tuesday and Wednesday, and I don't want you to panic about a lockdown. If they, the College Board is a wealthy organization, and if they cause you undue trauma, there will be recourses. So anyway, book pickup Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and I may as well, although I don't have them in the room, so I give them to you now, but we'll have to do Wednesday for our in-person. I'll give you guys your books, your copies. And it's kind of a just in case right now, and that just in case, we're going to start Heart of Darkness probably that last week before spring break. But I just want them to be in hand. Somebody might at some point, have to go into quarantine without any kind of notice or warning. and I want you to have them in hand. And again, be thinking about what direction we want to go for our Monday. Do you want it to be another workday, research day, or do you want it to be somehow linked to the Tempest? Okay? So we'll start with a look at your questions from our Jamboard. And let me pull them up here too. That's a lot. So that was a lot. Let me let me pause. Do you have questions? Do you have any questions?
Is virtual, but we're taking it in.
So it's going to be, the AP exam will be digital. And so it'll be like iStep has been, okay? But it's also, yeah, I don't know the rest of the details. So like for a student who is 100% virtual and is absolutely concerned about, possibly contracting COVID, there are like 130 students. And I don't know how they're gonna do it other than utilize St. Mark Missionary Church as they've done in the past. But if they're gonna do that, then why not the paper and pen? But it's out of my hands. So yeah, I don't know exactly what that's gonna look like yet. But as soon as Mr. Hall gives me stuff, I will always be sharing that with you once I get that information. Other questions?
Do you know if it's going to be like the regular length?
It is, yes. So as we were gearing up for last year's, and certainly in the wake of last year's and during the scoring of last year's, there were lots of conversations coming from, higher echelons of people within College Board saying that schools said, this year we're certainly going to give you a break because of the extremity of the circumstances, but you better be prepared next year for unexpected circumstances. And so they've invested quite a bit in these unexpected circumstances. I know the scoring will be from home. I've not received an invitation this year, but I have done it for 4 years in the past, and I did the pilot scoring last year. And so they try to bring in new people every now and then. I'm still in the pool. I might get an invitation like the day before, and it'd be like, okay, do I want to do this for, however much they pay? I want to say it's only like $8 an hour. But that seems low. It might actually be way more than that, but it's hard to, the scoring online is probably as hard as it is, taking it online. My concern is the multiple choice, and that you can't go back. And some of the fact that they're going to do 3 different sessions of the exam, including multiple choice, makes me question the strength of, the varying difficulties regarding those multiple choice, because sometimes they use previous ones for the test that they've used before that are normed. It's just, I don't envy them. I don't envy you. I don't envy me. It's all really complicated. But colleges said, you better figure it out. And so they've got a plan. I don't know what the plan is. But, and even with the digital, I think you take it at the same time as everybody else in the world, just as you did last year. And so like a student in Japan has to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to take their test. It's there's a lot of unpleasantries. So, other questions? And the camera's pointing in the wrong direction. Other questions? I came over here to get my Tempest. So let's take a look at these Tempest questions. I need to make that bigger. probably need to make this bigger. And I tried to kind of order them as best as I could. And you guys had a lot, which is nice compared to your other classes, your peers in other classes. So, kind of starting in order and by row and then moving down. The strangeness of your story put heaviness in me. Does Miranda know that Prospero put her to sleep? Does he use his powers on Miranda often? So for the first question, I don't think so. I don't think she's conscious of that. And ultimately when she wakes up, so she says that and then she's asleep. And then, no, she says that when she wakes up, sorry. And right before she falls asleep, she says, I guess she doesn't get to say anything. He just puts her to sleep. Thou art inclined to sleep. Cease more questions, thou art inclined to sleep. And then she falls asleep. So does he do this a lot? What do you think? What do you think? Does he put her to sleep a lot?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes too.
Keeps her like innocent.
Yes, he does keep her innocent. Absolutely. So I mean, it's a curious sort of thing, and it's interesting. Somebody wrote an essay on Brave New World that gave me a new perspective on the links between Brave New World and The Tempest. And how many of you have read Brave New World? Anybody at home? So, putting her to sleep, that's song. That's the drug. That's the anesthetization that goes on. And, in the case of 1984, for those of you who've read 1984, it's Victory Gin. In our current era, one of my concerns, what happens with the legalization of marijuana? I don't know how I feel about it. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it is a narcotic. It is an anesthetizing agent. Through anesthetization, we become numb to things in our society. And so despite the fact that, legalization or decriminalization, that there may be positives that come out of that, at the same time, it concerns me for, kind of our ability to move forward and or our ability to, be taken over because we're not paying attention to things, because we're just numb to stuff. So it's a conflicting sort of thing. But so this idea of putting her to sleep and being able to control in that way it's a curious sort of link, I think. The end of Act 3, Scene 1. Prospero's happy about Miranda and Ferdinand falling in love, but his final sentence on line 93, I'll to my book, must I perform much business appertaining. What does he mean by this? Is there more to his plan than the two simply falling in love? Moving into Act 4, can I talk about Act 4 without spoiling too much? I did ask that you read it, but can I move into Act 4? Okay, so they get married. They get married by ancient Greek goddesses. So it's to get them married so that, he's now Ferdinand's father-in-law. And so there is a bond that exists. Granted, it's not, is it legally binding that they've been married by, goddesses? Who knows? It's a different era, different time. How does that all work? But yeah, so he's now got a certain level of control by being Ferdinand's father-in-law. So that's the plan. How does the conflict between Prospero and Caliban affect the others on the island? And by the others on the island, do we mean the others who've been shipwrecked on the island, or do we mean the other beings who are on the island? Does anybody remember if they were the one who asked that question? I know it was almost a week ago.
I was kind of talking about like the other people shipwrecked on the island that were kind of watching this all happen.
Oh, okay. So in terms of the conflict between Prospero and Caliban, as you know, we're seeing it kind of move forward. Caliban seeks to try to manipulate. At the same time, he is manipulated. So we're seeing now this plot of rebellion, revolution to overthrow Prospero on the island. But that's really, kind of it moving forward. Does it, well, I want to wait and see what other questions have kind of come up here. But so there's some interesting interpretations that we might have to discuss. But that's, a valid, important question. Anything significant that we need to know on 28 to 30? It seems like they're just telling jokes. It's hard to fully understand their conversation. And ultimately, I think it's the way that it's presented to us makes it difficult because we don't have a clear sense of who's hearing who in that particular scene. And so we're looking at Act 2, Scene 1. And then we get this business with the widow Dido, and how does that conversation fit in? So page 27. Beseech you, sir, be merry. You have cause, so have we all of joy. And he's talking to his king. But why is the king sad? Why is Alonso sad?
Sunday.
He thinks his son died. He's absolutely convinced that he witnessed Ferdinand die. And so Gonzalo's, beseech you, sir, be merry. You have cause, so have we all of joy, for our escape is much beyond our loss. Our hint of woe is common. Every day, some sailor's wife, the master of some merchant, and the merchant have just our theme of woe. But for the miracle, our preservation, few in millions can speak like us. Then wisely, good sir, weigh our sorrow with our comfort. And this is a thematic idea that was introduced back in Act 1, Scene 2. If we're looking at line 60, I think. No, that's not. Act 1, Scene 2, not Act 1, Scene 1. That was my issue. Act 1, Scene 2, yes. Line 60, Miranda saying, what foul play had we that we came from thence? Or blessed was it we did? Both, my girl. By foul play, as thou sayest, were we heaved thence, but blessedly hope hither. And then in Hagseed, Felix says, where there's booze, there's life. So you've got the thrill of the performance, but the negativity coming from the audience, and we have to take the good with the bad. And that is ultimately kind of what Gonzalo is saying there to the king. That yes, this is horrible, this is tragic, it's terrible, but we are alive. So we've got to recognize the positive with the negative. And this goes along with these complex traumas that we've talked about as well. So Alonso doesn't want to hear it. Prithee, peace. Sebastian, in an aside to Antonio, he receives comfort like cold porridge. The visitor will not give him or so. Look, he's winding up the watch of his wit. By and by, it will strike. So our editor, whoever finally bothered to write this down and put it all together, is not telling us that this aside between Antonio and Sebastian is continuing, but that's what's going on. So we've got Antonio and Sebastian in a private aside, while Gonzalo imagines that everybody's listening to him, and he tries to address Alonso. And so every time we've got Antonio and Sebastian speaking, they're in a side conversation, listening into what it is that Gonzalo is saying and the conversation that's happening. But Gonzalo is rather oblivious to the conversation that's happening between Sebastian and Antonio. They've got a debt, or a bet, I should say, between the two of them about where the conversation is going to go. There's lots of jokes, some of which are intended, well, not intended necessarily to go over our head, but we're not of the era, and so there's stuff that is just going to go over our head. So a lot of this would kind of be cut from a performance, but it's an important scene because of Alonso getting upset that he doesn't want to hear about this. He doesn't want to hear Gonzalo's positivity. He's devastated because of where they're coming from and what has just happened, and so he just doesn't want to hear from Gonzalo. So specifically, the business about Dido that gets at certainly a colonial theme. If you're familiar with the Aeneid, Aeneas has an affair with Queen Dido of Carthage, a North African country. And in doing so, what Virgil is doing in the creation of this mythology that exists between Aeneas and Dido is an explanation for the success of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is frequently in conflict with Carthage. It is from Carthage that we get Hannibal, who sends the elephants over the Alps, if you're familiar with that folklore. And so there's been this long-term conflict between Italy, the Roman Empire, and North Africa that Dido is representative of, and she's linked then to Alonso's daughter because Alonso's daughter is married to a king of North Africa. So there's this attempt. She's now queen of Tunis, which is now Tunisia. Carthage is now, is it Libya, I think, approximately thereabouts. So these North African countries, and that's what Shakespeare is kind of illustrating for us. So hopefully that clarifies some things. Is that, not that it should make sense necessarily, but if we know Aeneas and Dido, then that becomes a little bit clearer. And she is devastated at the loss of Aeneas and so on and so forth. Let's see here. Antonio and Sebastian are indeed planning to murder Alonso. So Ariel swoops in. Oh, 30, 35, 34, 35, yeah, 34, bottom of 34. Ariel always associated with music. And top of 35, Gonzalo says, no, I warn you, I will not adventure my discretion so weakly. Will you laugh me asleep, for I am very heavy. All of a sudden, Ariel appears and I'm exhausted. Of course, they don't see Ariel. And Antonio says, go, sleep and hear us. So everybody falls asleep except Alonso, Sebastian, and Antonio. And Alonso is surprised, what, all soon asleep? I wish mine eyes would with themselves shut up my thoughts. I find they are inclined to do so. I wish I could fall asleep to, clear my head a little bit. Please you, sir. Do not omit the heavy offer of it. It seldom visits sorrow. When it doth, it is a comforter. We too, my lord, will guard your person while you take your rest and watch your safety. Thank you. Wondrous heavy. And Alonzo falls asleep. So we get this idea, and this occurs in Shakespeare frequently. Did you guys read Macbeth last year? Was that one of your pieces? No? Anybody? Has anybody read Macbeth? So in Macbeth, when Lady Macbeth can no longer sleep, she loses her mind. And so there is a recognition on Shakespeare's part of how necessary sleep is for our regeneration and our ability to function. We need to have sleep in our lives. There's nothing to celebrate about, managing to stay up for an extended period of time, especially when, you're suffering in some way. Sleep provides us with, sleep is a balm. It has a calming influence. And so then we get this, what a strange drowsiness possesses them. It is the quality of the climate. It's subtropical, maybe. Why doth it not then our eyelids sink? Why aren't we falling asleep? I find not myself disposed to sleep, nor I. My spirits are nimble. They fell together all as by consent. They dropped as by a thunderstroke. That's weird. They all fell asleep at once. What might, worthy Sebastian? Oh, what might? No more. So Antonio right away leaps to, it's as if they were all killed by lightning. What if? No, let's not talk about that. And yet, are you thinking what I'm thinking? The occasion speaks thee. My strong imagination sees a crown dropping upon my head. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, and these guys all die, you're the king. Just imagine. What? Art thou waking? Do you not hear me speak? Are you asleep? Are you awake? Are you talking to me? Do you not hear me speak? I do. And surely it is a sleepy language, and thou speakst out of thy sleep. This is like a dream. What is it thou didst say? This is a strange repose, to be asleep with eyes wide open, standing, speaking, moving, and yet so fast asleep. So Sebastian thinks, this is not a conversation we ought to be having in real life. This must be a dream. You are out of your mind. Noble Sebastian, thou lett'st thy fortune sleep. Die, rather, winkst whilst thou art waking. This is your chance. Seize the moment. Thou dost snore distinctly. There's meaning in thy snore. So Sebastian he's starting to maybe come along a little bit here. You're making noise. I am more serious than my custom. You must be so too, if heed me, which to do trebles the oar. Well, I am standing water. I'll teach you how to flow. Do so. To ebb hereditary sloth instructs me. Explain what's going on here. Oh, if you but knew how you the purpose cherish, whilst thus you mock it, how in stripping it you more invested. Ebbing men indeed most often do so near the bottom run by their own fear or sloth. What is it that prevents us from doing the thing that we ought to do to better ourselves? Prithee, say on. So, what Antonio here is talking about is kind of what Caliban is going to be plotting momentarily. So there's a parallel here between Antonio's actions and Caliban's actions. Antonio is perhaps hesitant to do the dirty work, as is Caliban, because ultimately, it's Antonio wants Sebastian to be the one who does the deed, so that he has something on him. So it's a very clever, manipulative kind of thing that's going on. Prithee, sing on, the setting of thine eye and cheek proclaim a matter from thee, and a birth indeed, which throws thee much to yield. Thus, sir, although this lord of weak remembrance, this who shall little be of as little memory, when he is earthed, hath here almost persuaded, for he is a spirit of persuasion only, professes to persuade the king his sons alive. 'Tis as impossible that he's undrowned as he that sleeps here swims. So Ferdinand is not alive. And so if Ferdinand is dead, then, are you following me? Sebastian says, I have no hope that he's undrowned. Oh, out of that no hope, what great hope have you? No hope that way is another way so high a hope that even ambition cannot pierce a wink beyond, but doubt discovery there. Will you grant with me that Ferdinand is drowned? He's gone. Then tell me, who's the next heir of Naples? Claribel? She that is queen of Tunis? She that dwells 10 leagues beyond man's life? She that from Naples can have no note unless the sun were post, the man of the moon's too slow, till newborn chins be rough and razorable? She that from whom we all were sea swallowed, though some cast again, and by that destiny to perform an art whereof what's past is prologue, what to come in yours and my discharge. Claribel, she can't rule over her. She's too far away. What stuff is this? How say you? 'Tis true my brother's daughter's queen of Tunis, so is she heir of Naples. So Sebastian's maybe a little slow. Twixt which regions there is some space. A space whose every cubit seems to cry out, how shall that Claribel measure us back to Naples? Keep in Tunis, and let Sebastian wake. Say this were death that now hath seized them. Why, they were no worse than now they are. There be that can rule Naples as well as he that sleeps. Lords that can prate as amply and unnecessarily as this Gonzalo. I myself could make a chuff as deep chat. Oh, that you bore the mind that I do. If only you could see how wonderful this would be. What a sleep were this for your advancement. Do you understand me? Methinks I do. And how does your content tender your own good fortune? What do you think of what I'm saying? I remember you did supplant your brother Prospero. True? And look how well my garments sit upon me. Everything fits right. Much feeter than before. My brother's servants were then my fellows. Now they are my men. But for your conscience. So the human nature question. Didn't you feel guilty in overthrowing your brother? Sending him out? Who knows where? But for your conscience, aye, sir, where lies that? If 'twere a tide, 'twould put me to my slipper. But I feel not this deity in my bosom. 20 consciences that stand twixt me and Milan, candied be they, and melt ere they molest. Here lies your brother, no better than the earth he lies upon. If he were that which now he's like that's dead, whom I with this obedient steel 3 inches of it can lay to bed forever. Whilst you, doing thus to the perpetual wink, for I might put this ancient morsel, this Sir Prudence, who should not upbraid our course. For all the rest, they'll take suggestion as a cat laps milk. They'll tell the clock to any business that we say befits the hour. So we kill these guys, and everybody will listen to what we have to say. Thy case, dear friend, shall be my precedent. As thou gotst Milan, I'll come by Naples. Draw thy sword, one stroke shall free thee from the tribute which thou payest, and I, the king, shall love thee. Draw together, and when I rear my hand, do you the like to fall it on Gonzalo. So we've got to do this at the same time, or else one of them is going to have power over the other. Oh, but one word, and Ariel recognizes that, oh, this is a problem. We need to stop this, and so he wakes everybody up. And they pretend that there was something that was coming that they needed to attack, and so that's why their swords are drawn. Ariel, in terms of tricking them into doing that, it is, I think it may be part of Prospero's plan. We don't get a lot of clarity where that's concerned, but it is, I mean, it certainly is an important idea that we want to kind of keep in mind. So Ariel is doing this for Prospero. It may have gone a little bit farther than he thought it was going to go. He's present there ultimately, you know, the whole time, but as they're about to, you know, come to blows and strike, you know, Ariel pops in. My master, through his art, foresees the danger that you, his friend, are in, and sends me forth, or else his project dies, to keep them living. And so, you know, what is the project that Prospero has in mind that Gonzalo, at the very least, needs to survive? But I think he needs Gonzalo and Alonso to survive in order to, get through. And so does Prospero, has he planned this all along? Has he been planning this for 12 years? Or is it just, kind of a rapid sort of, as things fall into place, I've got to do these things. So that's one of the reasons why this play is problematic. So question, Caliban, was Caliban shipwrecked with Prospero? How did they meet? Was he angry that Prospero saved Ariel, who his mother imprisoned? And we don't learn a whole heck of a lot about Caliban. Not much at all. But let me actually share with you something that appears later in our agenda. So I need to bring it for you. And it was wonderful. A student shared this with me last year. This beautiful, beautiful poem. I'm going to jump over. Yes, I'm going to take over. And this is part of a series, which is really interesting. A Moment Alone. And if we look over about this poem, see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Whoa, there we go. In The Tempest, the relationship between Prospero and Caliban's mother, Sycorax, is a bit of a mystery. Supposedly, Prospero only knew her by rumor, but he knows a bit too much about her and has too much animus toward her for them never to have at least met. The collection of poems, When I Waked, I Cried to Dream Again, explores Sycorax's relationship with Caliban and her history with Prospero. And so this is from Sycorax's perspective. As if someone blew against the back of my neck, I writhed up, becoming a wind myself, and I flowed out the window of my bedroom. Maybe I also emitted a moan over the croaking of the frogs that night. Then I raised my arms to the clouds, rooting my feet deep in the soil. A stretch, I called it. Now, pure nature in the night, too sway of the trees, wise to worry about men. I opened my nightgown, but offered nothing to anyone. This is for me, I said aloud to the night. People would have laughed had they seen me out their windows naked, but for my nightgown flapping. I was small, but the conviction of my stance would have made me seem immense, framed through their windows. Without my clothes, I was a world of possibility, more than a desire. I, knowing better, I ought to mind my place. I ought to walk like a lady. I ought to demure myself to make him feel stronger. I ought to mourn him when he is gone. Who's him? But every word I spoke to the wind carried to him the scent of his regrets. Every word blew through the night, a breeze of my indifference. And so the interpretation that A. Van Jordan is presenting to us here is the notion that trying to do something and talk at the same time, is the notion that there may have been a relationship between Prospero and Sycorax. And so that would then raise questions as to who is Caliban? In a similar way that we ask the question, what is Grendel? So Caliban brings us back to Grendel in a lot of ways. These uncertainties that, as an audience of art, we just have to accept. We don't know, a lot of details about Caliban, and we know even less about Ariel, which makes things rather complicated. Oh, what am I going to be presenting? What am I presenting? Awesome. Okay. And then these questions about Caliban and his loyalties. And I've got another proposal about Caliban as well, just momentarily. So why is Caliban so loose with his loyalty, willing to change masters? Is there something I'm missing about Caliban's character or role? He hates Prospero. I mean, he hates Prospero. He knows he hates Prospero, and if there's any kind of possibility of survival without Prospero, he sees it in these other guys. Why does he switch loyalties so quickly? Is it to get a better stance to become master of the island? Yeah, I mean, that's it. Caliban wants the island back. But he's going to be surrendering it to these other people who are, possibly just as bad. He really doesn't, ultimately he's giving it up to these other individuals. And so, there's a lot of post-colonial interpretations of this text. This is happening at the time that, so it's written, it's written just a few years before Pocahontas comes to England as like a sideshow freak. She is married, but what kind of marriage is that really? And is it Squanto who served as like some sort of slave for an English fisherman? Somehow Squanto knows English when the Pilgrims arrive. And so this would be around the time that some Native Americans are are in England. And we see a little bit of that conversation between Stefano and Trinculo as well. And so, who owns any kind of land? And, Caliban is supposedly the native. And, is he just giving over from one master to another? There's a lot of questions. But he wants to overthrow Prospero because of how mean Prospero has been, ultimately. Caliban does want to be the master of the island. Maybe part of it might be that he sees weakness in Stefano, and that he would easily be able to overthrow him. That may be a possibility. He certainly is not magical, and so that would be something. But then again, Stefano provides him with the fire water, and so he may enjoy that a little too much. So the significance of the drunk conversation, it's comedic. It's a comedic sideshow, and we're supposed to get that, how badly Caliban wants to get rid of Prospero, even working with these two clowns, and they are clowns. I think one of them is actually identified in the cast list as. Trinculo is a jester. So he's literally a clown. Mooncalf, in terms of what that means, we got a footnote, right? Didn't we? I don't think it tells us, though. It doesn't provide us with any kind of satisfaction, anyway. Anybody look it up? Oh, it's used in Harry Potter, apparently. Foolish person. Wikipedia identifies it as a monstrous birth. In Harry Potter, a shy magical beast that only came out of its burrow during a full moon. Merriam-Webster. A foolish or absent-minded person, a simpleton. A helpless moon calf of a man, poorly equipped for a grueling life. And some of the synonyms: dingling, a doofus, a fool, a British git. So, Act 3, Scene 2, Caliban says they must seize the books first. First to possess his books, for without them he is but a sot. Does Prospero get his power from these books? That seems to be the case, especially because of what happens in the end. But what is the power that Prospero has? What does he have the power to do? And this is a question that I do not have an answer to. Despite the fact that I've studied this a couple of times, not as long as I've studied some other things, but this is, where does Prospero get his power from? Especially if you take a look at, I think it's Act 4, Scene 1. Page 64, line 32, I think. Maybe 31, where Prospero speaks. Fairly spoken. Sit then and talk with her. She is thine own. Go talk to the girl. Go on. What? Ariel, my industrious servant Ariel. Ariel shows up. What would my potent master? Here I am. Thou and thy meaner fellows your last service did worthily perform, and I must use you in such another trick. Go bring the rabble, o'er whom I give thee power, here to this place. Bring the rabble, over whom I give you power. So I'm giving the power to you to bring the rabble here to this place. Incite them to quick motion, for I must bestow upon the eyes of this young couple some vanity of mine art. It is my promise, and they expect it from me. Presently, I with a twink. Before you can say come and go, and breathe twice and cry so, each one tripping on his toe will be here with mop and mow. Do you love me, master? No? Dearly, my delicate Ariel, do not approach till thou dost hear the call. Well, I conceive. So does he need Ariel to do the magic? Does he have Ariel deluded into believing that Prospero is capable of doing magic? I don't know. But again, it may be a show. It may be an illusion. That Ariel believes that Prospero is powerful because Prospero happened to have an axe and was able to free Ariel from. And so is that, I don't know. Lots of questions. So yes, it appears that Prospero gets his power from these books, but what is the power that he gets from the books? And we don't even know that. First part of Prospero's revenge, making a fake feast that disappears after they see it, is they get that feeling of, here's your prize, now I take your prize. The first part of his revenge is making them think that Ferdinand is dead, and or shipwrecking them. That's really the biggest part of it. But if Prospero is that powerful, why has he been stuck on this island for 12 years? And that Willing suspension of disbelief. Yeah, totally. Okay, I get it. I'll buy into that, idea. And maybe it's because, of sadness, because of the trauma, because of, what have you, that we, how often is it that we accept the miseries that come our way and do nothing to lift our fingers to escape them? And I think that frequently happens. I think we do that a lot. Folks at home, what would you say? Would you say that we do that a lot? That we find ourselves in a position that we're miserable with, but rather than doing anything about it, we don't. We just don't. And why do we do that? And maybe it's we grow accustomed to the dark bit of business. Or we forget that we have choices, as Nikki Giovanni points out. That we can choose to do something different than what we are currently doing. Are these the characters that line up in the novel and play? Felix is Prospero, yes. Tony is Antonio. Sal is Alonzo. In terms of Siebert and Sebastian, yeah, maybe. I mean, the Sebastian and Trinculo aren't quite necessarily there. It's convenient that they happen to have the first three same letters, and so yeah, I'm going to err on the side of agreeing with that. But Sebastian and Trinculo are so, I would imagine that they're frequently cut from the play overall, or a lot of their stuff is frequently cut from the play overall. Freddie is Ferdinand, yes. Anne-Marie would be Miranda. Lonnie would be Gonzalo. He's the one who tries to save him at the very beginning as well. And then Miranda is our Ariel. Does Trinculo connect? Not really. This Caliban question, so this is where I'm going to propose something that you don't have to accept necessarily, but we'll kind of see what happens. I would like to propose that Caliban and Prospero and Ariel could be played by one person. That they somehow are representative of, Caliban would certainly be the id, and then Ariel would be maybe the superego, and Prospero would be the ego. Jung talks about us having dual personalities, and so, that we are, kind of doubles. And so there's a possibility maybe that Caliban and Ariel could be one in the same. And if I think about it, I don't know that Caliban and Ariel, no, I guess there are scenes where they appear on stage at the same time. But if he appears invisibly, and what does that mean? Because they don't necessarily see him. But ultimately, I mean, Caliban is all of our id, I think. That primeval, kind of prehistoric force that exists within all of us, that makes us do, vengeful things. We're motivated by, the basics, the baseness of our humanity with our id. And I think that's what Caliban ultimately represents. And there is a part of Caliban that I think exists in all of us. So that's all your questions from the Jamboard. What other questions do you have now? Do you have new ones? We've only got a few minutes left. Okay.
Is the front cover supposed to be Miranda?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And then that, I don't know, there looks to be like some kind of green figure. And would that be Caliban, or would it be Ariel? But I think the kind of overarching, the red figure would be Prosper. Other questions? I wore too many layers. It's kind of hot.
It's nice outside. It's like
It is,
60
yeah.
degrees.
Other questions? Do things sound clear?
I have a question.
Fire away.
I don't know if it's so much as a question as it is like a confirming something. So I know there's significance in the fact that Miranda asks Ferdinand to marry her. It's not the opposite. So that would be totally against like kind of society, the way that society would do it. So is there more to that than just, because he kind of just passes it by like, oh yeah, she asked him to marry him.
Right. Miranda is frequently pointed to as, one of our Shakespearean feminists, one of our Shakespearean proto-feminists, in that, she's very much not influenced by society. And so she is not going to follow the traditional strictures of society. And, this marriage between her and Ferdinand may be one of equals. But it's, ultimately not anything that we get to see kind of pursued any further. But yeah, I mean, it is certainly an absolutely important kind of notion. And I'm wondering, in terms of Miranda and like what other pieces are being written around the same time or performed around the same time, kind of where she falls in terms of, Shakespeare's representations of women. Is she coming out of an era of Kate from Taming of the Shrew and Portia from Merchant of Venice, or is she coming out of some sort of different era, or does he just seek to represent individuals in a variety of different ways? What is Shakespeare's? What are his goals in terms of the way that he represents different genders and so on and so forth, and foreigners? Other questions?
I have a little bit. So, hasn't Miranda, isn't her only experience with anything like with her dad?
Right.
Has she had, so society hasn't had a chance to influence her,
Right.
So saying that she went against society. I mean, yes, she did go against society when it was written and influenced,
Right.
but she didn't have the influence of society.
Right, and so as a result of that, she's not consciously challenging, the way society works, but it is by her nature. And so, Shakespeare is raising that question. What comes of these young colonists who are born in Jamestown? What comes of these individuals? Will they be loyal to the crown? He almost makes the proposal. It's almost a Newtonian kind of idea that we've got this territory now across an ocean. How much control are we actually going to have over those people who are way over there? And so there's, we could point to the Tempest as an possible early inspiration for the founding fathers. That that it doesn't make any sense for us to be ruled by this other entity, by the institution. Any more? Yeah.
I was wondering, so Miranda is going against society, but not on purpose. So how does she differ from a woman who does do it? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. So we've got Kate from Taming of the Shrew, who is treated badly within her society because of her conscious kind of confrontation. Ultimately, we don't know what happens to Miranda after having left the island, but it is, this quality of her both innocence and oblivion, for lack of a better word, to how society functions, is one of the features that Ferdinand happens to find attractive. Fair question. We've only got a few minutes left. In terms of Monday, do you want to continue working with the Tempest, or would you prefer for that to be a work day? And so let me put that into the polls as well. And what do you guys want?
Yeah. I feel like with the Tempest, I like to like be able to ask you questions like when we're going through it together.
Launch it for them. So I've launched it. Yeah, so looking at our results, it's going to be a work day. And I will certainly look at any questions that you may have had from our last one, and try to get you feedback over the weekend, if not today. And don't forget to be specific when you're asking for help. I've had a lot of people say, I'm having trouble finding sources. And so what is it that you're doing? Remind me what you're doing. I've got 100 of you and I do not remember what everybody is doing. So tell me how I can help you. Help me help you. Okay? Is everybody familiar with that movie? Nobody gets that movie? No. Jerry Maguire? No. Okay. Okay, great. Good. That's a movie for you to put on your list. All right. And yeah, what time is it?
We have 1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. So folks at home, you can go ahead and go. I'll see you around. See you next week, Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
You too.
You guys stay safe, stay healthy.